A claim for us, welcoming the speaker of the day, the chair of the day, the discussant, and none of them are strangers in a sense, I suppose. Basically, we say like welcoming the friends, in a sense, broad family members. And the family members are actually welcomed only when, I think in Bible, only the prodigal son was welcomed. So these are not prodigals. These are actually, there's no need of any welcome, but I feel extremely happy to be with the great company of Gifts of Friends, the Friends of Gift. We have Dr. Zakaria, as you are all aware, he was until 6 months ago, he was one among us here. Even now, he is very much. In fact, we are free riding on him. After his exciting involvement, or rather exemplary and highly committed involvement with institute, he has moved to Australia, and currently he is working as economist in the Department of Social Services, Government of Australia. For the benefit of those who are here, it's I am not here to welcome. I am not here to introduce. It is the job of the chair. So I need to say only this much. Zakaria, you know that you are always welcome here, and today afternoon, especially welcome. And we are also thankful to you for agreeing to give this seminar. Now, Professor Uday Shankar Misra is no stranger to gift, and he is one of the closest friends of mine, a long academic associate of over 37, 38 years, I suppose. Although we look very young. Professor Uday Shankar Misra is currently a professor at IAPS. After his long stint in Center for Development Studies, a trained statistician turned demographer. I think Professor Misra is different, not just different, he's unique. I don't think that there are many demographers in the country who can really reflect so thoroughly with an economic basis, within an economic perspective, and particularly on issues of poverty, inequality, and these and other developmental issues, and the way in which he brings new insights that tells the galaxy of scholars that he has created as a wonderful teacher and supervisor. So thank you very much for kindly agreeing. And Dr. Simantini Mukhopadhyay, IDSK is very much close to GIFT, and I think you are coming first time to GIFT, and you are former director, I suppose.
Yes, sir.
Achin Chakravarti and Indrani, both.
Yes.
I think yes. Both of them are my great friends.
Yeah.
Please. And Simandini, I was looking at your CV. I found it really impressive on the manner in which you have published and reflected upon various issues of relevance. I think I'm very sure your presence here as discussant is going to enrich the whole discussion and the whole deliberations over here. Thank you very much, and I very much welcome you for joining it. And I just cannot but say at least one sentence, very tempted to say about the context of the point which is being discussed, which in a more authentic way the chair will say, but to set the stage for the chair. My great friend, I would say that, I was telling my senior, our young PhD scholars that last week we have come up with an agenda. And India, we are in a highly euphoric position. We have become the fifth largest economy in the world, the fastest growing economy in the world, and going to be the third largest economy by 2029. And in the last Niti Aayog meeting, the Prime Minister of our country said, look, we are going to have a next ambitious agenda of becoming a developed country by 2047. He said developed country, and we know as per the World Bank criteria, we are now a lower middle income country with the 2,200 or so per capita income. And you have to cross something like $4,500 to become a middle income country. And in the middle income country, there will be so many of the middle income traps, which today's middle income countries are trapped in for many, many years. And before that, we'll have many more traps to overcome to become the middle income country. And then to cross $12,500 per capita income or so to become high income country. But high income country need not be a developed country. A developed country means in terms of Human Development Index, in terms of SDGs, in terms of other things, you have to display satisfy certain conditions. And it is in this juncture today that when you are talking about SDG and talking about HDI, in one of the crucial aspect of that, particularly when you're talking about health in terms of life expectancy, education. And I think in India, when we talk about what is called our demographic dividend, the whole thing actually starts here, an issue which Secretary has slightly taken for discussion. And I request the chair of the day to Professor Misra to chair and conduct the proceeding.
Thank you, Professor Joseph. It's really a pleasure and privilege to be back here, and particularly to be involved in a discussion which is not merely relevant and important. Even today's mainstream newspaper carries an item on the issue of child wasting in India. And it has been in contention for a considerable amount of time now. Another reason that I feel myself suitable and I feel very encouraged to be part of it is because the information base that is actually, creating a discussion, generating a discussion on nutrition is primarily from the institute where we generate this information by periodic National Family Health Survey. Although I won't deny that nutrition information exists other sources as well. But it's really very exciting to have Jakaria, my student, who has been actually working on nutrition related concern for quite a long time, whether it is about anthropometry, whether it's about calorimetry. The only thing I felt when I was asked by Professor Joseph to get involved in this particular discussion, I felt that actually many debates are coming around, not merely on nutrition measurement, nutrition assessment, but also worldwide. This is one point of contention which puts India at the back foot, because we do not have really, we have never progressed substantially as we claim as regard to improving nutritional makeup in children. Although trends of 3 parameters of child nutrition, stunting, wasting, and undernourishment, as regard undernourishment and stunting, there might be an improvement. But as regard wasting, there is not. So let me, for the cause of the audience, say that what is different about wasting is that, as you know, the literature discovers a lot of correlates and determinants of undernourishment in children when it comes to whether underweight or stunting. There is no systematic correlate evidence that comes out for wasting when we follow the similar track of inquiry or verification or examination of the data. That is one. The other major contention that is important is about this whole issue of nutrition measurement, whether should it be normative or otherwise it should be different. That contention stays, and that's why that generates a lot of debate as to whether India's nutritional status or this very issue of back foot which I described is really true, or it is correct, or it is in a global perspective comparable. These are contentions which are very important who are working with nutrition data, particularly anthropometric data of the children nutritional status. I won't go into that in case, I don't want to come in between the speaker and the audience of today, but I must sincerely say that as much it is important to examine these outcomes in the three determined facts like underweight, stunting, and wasting, there is also another trajectory which is emerging as called growth faltering. So in fact, why growth faltering is not getting examined in more serious manner in early years of life is because one vital information that is very badly obtained by our country, whether it is with clinical setting or through surveys, is the birth weight, which becomes the first biomarker of life. In that regard, also, I have been engaged in certain discussion with the government as to how, as we are talking about registration to be completed, we are also talking about this first biomarker to be obtained accurately. And that is another trajectory in which the nutrition discussion can go on. With these few observations that I have on this topic, I had an opportunity to have a quick reading of this paper. And I would like to hear Zakaria because he's a data man. He has done his work. This paper is not lengthy. It does not, of course, it is a very good background set. But I think your views and opinions, I will take a good hearing and then come back for a discussion with the audience, and they hopefully benefit from today's discussion at large. Thank you very much. How much time do you want, Zakaria, to present? About 30 minutes? Less than that?
I was targeting something around 40 minutes because the problem is that a substance will not take so much time, but because of the benefit of the students, I'm trying to introduce the metrics.
Yes.
So it may take a little bit more time, but the substance of the paper is very short actually. So just for the benefit of the students, I want to kind of focus on introductory issues.
Okay, absolutely. Please go ahead.
40 minutes, sir.
Yes, sure.
Thank you so much, sir. And I am so glad that, I've got a discussion who is expert in this area and chairperson who is a master of all this data that I am trying to work around. So I'm really glad that this is happening, and I'm sure that I'll get very productive comments after the presentation. I'll begin. Let me just put my PowerPoint presentation in a shared mode. So I hope you are able to see my screen.
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay. So as already highlighted, that nutrition puts India, nutrition story, the lack of progress puts India in a back foot because the project of improving nutrition has not really progressed in proportion to the economic progress that India have had, particularly after the reform period in 1990s, but more so from 2000s. This paper is actually a joint effort of myself and Rabiul Ansari from Ravenshaw University, and then Muhammad Imran Khan, and then Sunny Jose, who are past students of CDS. So you are well aware of them. So this is we started working on this paper basically to respond to the criticisms that were leveled in India on India's rank of GHI. But then, we went a little bit deeper into the idea of wasting, and the paper that you have read is a draft that we want to revise more thoroughly based on the idea that we should first focus on wasting and then try to respond to GHI in a more systematic way. So just to understand the context a little bit better for the benefit of the students, I want to focus first on measures of nutrition. So one of the most common measure of nutrition that is used is actually height for age measure.
Zakaria, make it full screen if you can.
Okay.
Yeah, please.
Slides are the same.
No, that he is reading.
Is it better now?
Yeah, it's better. Perfect.
Okay. So height is a long-term or chronic measure of nutrition because height just does not change very quickly or does not respond to small changes in this nutritional or minor changes in the nutritional access or resources. So it's more stable measure, so you can rely on that for sustained period of time, like it gives you more sort of solid measure, more reliable measure. So a child is supposed to attain a minimum standard height for his given age, and if child fails to attain that standard height, he or she is termed as stunted. One of the key factor that is why it is being so much used in the literature for as a measure of child nutrition is that there is a one-to-one correspondence between the brain development and the height. So what you see in physical terms is height, but then brain is also developing the size of the brain, and of course the corresponding associated factor is cognitive development is happening together. So if you are not able, or if your child is not able to attain proper height, that means he's also not able to attain brain development or size of brain development. So this is why stunting gets focused. First of all, it is a more reliable measure of undernutrition for a given period of time, and it is actually associated with the development of brain size. So these are the two factors that actually makes it very, very important. Nevertheless, there is another measure, which is weight for height, which is the topic of this presentation, main focus of this presentation. So for a given height, you must attain some sort of body mass, and there is a balance that has to be maintained between height and weight. So if you don't attain minimum weight for your height, then you are supposed to have less than optimum body mass, and you are called wasted, or the child who is suffering from the lower body mass is called wasted. And this is a measure that actually is a very short term. So immediate, exposure to some sort of, infectious disease environment or natural disaster, which reduces the access to food or violence, can be easily seen the effect of those things on weight of the child. So so immediate changes can be, if you want to see the impact of immediate changes, on child, wasting or weight is the right indicator. So wasting should not be a major issue if it happens once in a blue moon. But if child is exposed to, sporadic events of, such crisis like violence or natural disaster or some sort of reduction in employment of their parents, then this becomes a issue because the child is consistently experiencing a limitation of nutrition. So another measure is weight for age measure, which is also related to weight, but it is a composite measure because a child of a particular age should have minimum weight. Now, minimum weight may not be achieved because of two reasons. One is that because he's supposed to attain a certain, or she's supposed to attain a certain height, which he may not or she may not attain. So in that case, his weight would be low. But even if he has attained his sufficient of height or minimum standard height, his body mass may be low because of the lack of the food, because of the immediate effects of some sort of crisis or things like that. So this reflects both situations, long-term as well as short-term. So it is generally seen as a composite measure of child nutrition. On the other side, we have the corresponding side is that if the child is attaining more weight than his age, minimum standard age, then he's termed or she's termed as overweight. So this is a measure that encompasses both long-run and short-run measures. So nutritional outcomes actually they depend on individual level endowments and entitlements, like resources, like for example parents' economic resources, employments, and income, but they also greatly depend on epidemiological environment. So the environment that you are living in is very, very important determinant of your health, because infectiousness of the environment actually can neutralize some of the positive effects of nutritional intake, which is function of your entitlement or endowments. So they interact, these two factors interact together to actually produce a result, which is outcome of the nutrition. So environment can act as a constraint or catalyst to the nutritional outcomes of the children given their individual level endowment. So for example, Kerala has a better environment for children to grow, or healthier environment for children to grow. So Dalit or indigenous children actually have better nutritional outcome than the upper caste children in UP. And this is because they have they grow, even though their endowment or resources may be lower. In Kerala, the minorities in Kerala, but they face better environment. But children of upper caste in UP, they may have better endowments or better entitlements, but they live in worse environments, so they produce a worse outcome. And we will see it later a little bit. So people who are living in infectious environment generally have to consume higher calories because of the worsening of the intestinal health. Efficiency of absorption of calories that we consume reduces. So people in Kerala and Tamil Nadu, which have better epidemiological environment, consume on an average lower calories than people living in Bihar or Odisha. This is just to show you a picture of average calorie intake in 2012, which is basically average calorie of Tamil Nadu and Bihar across the expenditure deciles just to control for economic status. You can clearly see that Tamil Nadu is a richer state, but its calorie intake is actually lower on an average by something like 100 calories per day. So a better environment, even though Tamil Nadu does not face economic constraint, its calorie intake is on an average lower than Bihar, which is Bihar is a poor state. It faces a economic constraint, but still their calories are higher. So this simple chart shows you that the environment in which people live necessitate calorie intake. So the standards are actually derived by WHO's 2006 study where they did a purposive sample of 8,440 healthy breastfed infants and young children who grew in unconstrained growth environment. The samples were taken from Brazil, Ghana, India, Norway, Oman, and United States, which became the basis of standard. So almost all developing countries, including India, use this standard measure, but now increasingly, this is being put to the question, even though the evidence against such a questioning is there is no scope from the empirical evidence that we have is to put these standards to a question. Of course, there was a question of standards when these standards were derived purely from American children's data. So, but those days are over now. But still in India, because India has been lagging behind quite a bit in terms of stunting and particularly wasting. But of course, we will talk about it later. But the idea is that after 2006, WHO's, this sample of taking children from different countries, there is really very little scope to question that. So how do we set the standards? We set the standards by calculating Z scores for each of the measures. If the cutoff is -2 or above, I mean -2 and exceeds that, then we say that the child is malnourished according to that particular measure. It may be height for age, it may be weight for height, or it may be weight for age. So all those indicators, 3 indicators that we discussed, cutoff is 3, which basically means that children is scoring below 3rd percentile of the reference population, that is WHO 2006 study, will be considered as undernourished, right? So, and the cutoff for overweight will be obviously on the other right-hand side, which is positive greater than 2, which basically means that child who are having weights above 97th percentile of the reference population, right? So Z score is just basically linear transformation. Almost all of you are aware that it is done to measure things in a standard deviation unit. But here, in this case, we use mu as the median value of reference population and sigma as the standard deviation value of reference population. So these mu and sigma is coming from the original survey that is done for deriving the standards into 2006. So this is just a snapshot for latest 3 rounds of NFHS survey, and this is you can see that there is a reduction in stunting. So these figures may not completely match because I may have selected only major states. So absolute, it may not match exactly with the report. So you can see that in case of wasting, there is absolutely no progress. It has hovered around that 19-20% mark, and underweight also reduced by close to 10 percentage point, and stunting a little bit more, 12 to 13 percentage point, but wasting has not improved. And this is where I'm going to focus my attention on. So in absolute terms, what this means is basically out of 116 million children, close to 68 million children are either wasted, stunted, or suffering from both. So this area, so these children, 5.06 million people, children suffering from wasting as well as stunting, are seen as children at very high risk. So this is just to summarize the results. There are other indicators that we use is infant mortality rate and child mortality rate, which is a ratio of per 1,000 live births, and low birth weight or percentage of children who are born below 2.5 kilos. So now, as Professor Mishra actually highlighted, that this is something that we are, having a problem with in terms of the data. So if you look at, just a global average, as per the x-axis is log of real GDP per capita, and then percentage of children who are having low birth weight. So if you look at this, there is a bit of gradient, but India is actually here, but the problem is with the data. So global agencies actually do not report prevalence of low birth weight for India because it has very high level of missing values in NFHS survey, and also a lot of bunching of observations on certain round figures. So Sayyadun Nisa actually published a paper from IIPS, actually published a paper talking about this study, this low birth weight data. So you can see that 65 or close to 66% of the data was missing in 2005-06, and bunching is actually quite high. 18% of values are bunching around 2.5 kilos, which is actually very, this is 2.5 is a critical mark. So, you don't know whether it was just a guess or it was, so this kind of bunching, and bunching at 3 kilos, 21%. So nearly, 40% of the observation is bunched around 2 figures. Now, so to trust this data is very hard bargain. Now, then again, in 2015-16, we have reduced, number of missing cells, but then the bunching has actually increased, right? So whether this reduced cell is because people have, or enumerators have tried to, inquire more about birth weight and get a number from them, respondents, so that maybe, again, it reduces significantly in the latest survey to 8%. And then we have some reduction in bunching as well, but this bunching is still greater than what was in 2005-06. So we don't know whether quality has actually improved or not. So just to be careful about low birth weight data, when we use. Now, just to draw a global picture of mortality and putting India in perspective, we can see that if you look at right from India 2001, infant mortality of India compares quite well with the global average, global standards. So these red dots represent India, and they were earlier a little bit higher in 2000s, but now it has reduced, and it has actually doing better than global, slightly better than global average. So this is a consistent pattern that we will see. India does quite well in terms of saving lives of children. And then when we say stunting, there was a significant gap if you look at from global average. So India was here in terms of GDP per capita, but the average performance of countries who are around this GDP per capita was here. So quite a big gap, but then over time, the gap has been closing. But this is still significantly higher in 2020. So in terms of stunting or the height faltering, India is still not at global standards. And then if you look at the wasting, India is simply a big outlier. So all these numbers, right? India in 2006, 2015, so they just roam around, around 17 to 20% mark, and it is way higher than any other country. So the average should have been, so India is here somewhere. So this is the number. So that should be something like 7 to 9% or maybe 8%, but it is here around 17%, just double of what is expected. So this is the consistent pattern that we will see. India does quite worse in wasting, quite better in mortality, and intermediate in stunting. So if you compare Indian states with sub-Saharan African countries, you will see that in mortality again, these red dots are Indian states and the green dots are sub-Saharan African countries. I'm not going into the names, but you can clearly see. So if you take the average of all these states and the countries, that is 33, deaths per 1,000 live births. And then most of the green dots are above average and red dots are below. So Indian states actually do quite well in saving children. But there are few dots like Odisha, Uttar Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh, but they are closer to average than being here, right? So India does better in infant mortality rate. This is just a box plot to see the relative where they are. So you can see the median difference. And so India has advantage, but not absolute advantage in mortality. Now, just to see the stunting. Stunting gives you quite a mixed picture, but a bit of an advantage for sub-Saharan African countries, because you can see the red dots are more above average than red dots here, and sub-Saharan African countries are actually more here, below the average. So a bit of advantage for sub-Saharan African countries. So if you look at the box plot, a minor advantage for sub-Saharan African countries, a minor disadvantage for Indian states. Now, wasting. Look at the wasting. All the red dots are above average. So average is 9.3, and you can see Tripura, Karnataka here, and then all the green dots, which is sub-Saharan African country below average, except 4 or 5 countries that are above average for sub-Saharan African countries. Now, if you look at the box plot, it gives clear advantage to sub-Saharan African countries. In India is a big loser. Indian states are big loser in this process. So this is where my focus is. Now, I just want to get a little bit more disaggregated. If you look at the Kerala, Tamil Nadu, which is generally held as a very good performer in child nutrition. So if you look at the stunting, which is height faltering, you see clear advantage for Kerala and Tamil Nadu districts, and districts of Bihar is definitely way above. So there is no overlapping area for these two distributions, which means that Bihar is clearly losing out. And this is the pattern we have common imagination about, right? So Bihar is way behind, but this image actually talents quite significantly when you look at wasting. So this is the wasting of districts from Tamil Nadu and Kerala and districts of Bihar. So they have clearly overlapped completely. So which means that, and Bihar is slightly above median rank, but then the distribution is overlapping completely. So the advantage that we see for Kerala and Tamil Nadu in terms of stunting, we don't see that in terms of wasting, right? Just to give a little bit more sort of disaggregated picture, if you look at the social group of different states, so in terms of stunting, you see a clear gradation, right? So this is Kerala general. Kerala SC/ST, Kerala OBC, then comes Tamil Nadu, general OBC ST, and then comes general of Bihar and UP, OBC of Bihar and UP, and SC/ST of Bihar and UP. You can clearly see the gradation, and the difference is quite stark. But if you look at the wasting, the difference just disappears. And look at this. Kerala general, Tamil Nadu general, and Uttar Pradesh general is sitting together. Uttar Pradesh general is sitting together with, and the Kerala OBC and Uttar Pradesh OBC is sitting together. So there is no clear, advantage for, as I said, if you live in a better environment, even if your endowments are low, you may have advantage. You see that here, right? In case of stunting. So Kerala SC/ST and is definitely better than UP general, right? Now, this advantage is not here because Kerala SC/ST is actually here, right? So this advantage disappears. So whatever story we have about the standard notions of the gradation in terms of development indicators kind of disappears when we start looking at the wasting. Now, so this is just to bring a picture of the fact that the wasting measure just does not give that picture that we standardly understand or know about in terms of gradations across the states or across the different development indicators or human development indicators that we have. Now, we see a consistent pattern of seasonality in wasting, but not in stunting. So this is the graph for stunting. You see that this is December to February quarter, March to May, June to August, and for different years, starting with NFHS 3, NFHS 4, and 2 bars for NFHS 5. That's because of COVID, the survey got delayed, so some of the periods went into 2021. So there is a consistent decline in terms of for all the quarters. You see a consistent decline. But there is no seasonality pattern, right? But if you look at wasting, there is a consistent seasonality pattern. So you have lower prevalence in December to February, then it increases slightly, March to May, June to August, the monsoon thing goes up, and then again it starts declining. Now, one thing notice here, and in both these graphs, that 2020, March to May shows very significant reduction of stunting as well as wasting. So this is the reason why I avoid making comparisons for this period using NFHS 5 data. So for trying to bring logical arguments, I actually use NFHS 5, NFHS 4 in later periods. So this is about in the wasting story, there is a seasonal pattern, which means that if you measure someone at June and August, the child is more likely to be wasted. But if the measure is happening in December to February, that child's probability of being wasted is reduced. So, but this cross-sectional measurement, right, is actually causing a problem here because children have different likelihood of being wasted in different quarters. So, so stunting may give you a reliable figure because there is no patterning of seasonal patterning of stunting, but there is a seasonal patterning in wasting. So cross-section data will sort of underestimate wasting. And this is a consistent argument that is coming from longitudinal studies that we will discuss later. Now, I want to focus on lack of resilience of performance of sustaining the improved performance in case of Indian districts. So if you look at, these are modeled probability numbers. So we have actually used a multinomial logic to project the probability at district level. And I have tried to control for some of the factors that can actually improve, resilience. For example, ICDS access and utilization, education, and vulnerability of minorities, share of minority population, and so on and so forth. So all those usual suspects of factors that can affect the resilience have been controlled. So if you look at, so this is actually improving the performance as we go along the x-axis, and this is the change. So this is NFHS 4 level of performance and change in NFHS 5. So if you have a very high prevalence rates or very bad performance in NFHS 4, your likelihood of improving is quite high, both for stunting and both for stunting as well as wasting. But wasting is high, stunting is low, 87%, and in this case almost 99%. So as the performance is high, when we move to higher performance in NFHS 4, the probability of improvement kind of reduces very significantly, but the probability of deterioration actually goes up quite significantly. So this means that it is difficult for Indian districts to maintain performance once they achieve a better level of performance. So there is a vulnerability, not only just in wasting, but also in stunting. So just want to keep that in picture. So now we come to some sort of more given that empirical background, we just want to discuss why wasting is so important. So as we understand, wasting is a short-term measure of nutrition. So exposure to infections or food deprivation of food may show up immediately in wasting. And it is quite clear from the seasonal pattern that we saw. So monsoon quarters showed sufficiently high prevalence of wasting, and that may be because of the fact that at that time food is in short supply, and epidemiological environment goes worse because of the rains and the stocked up water and things like that. So sanitation and drainage is an issue in our country. In urban areas more, but it is not that rural areas don't face it. So both rural and urban areas face it. And therefore, we can say that weight of children vary more frequently than the height for a given reference period, which is usually 1 year in any society. And this society, particularly a large country like India, where disasters, violence, and economic shocks keep happening in different parts of the country at different points of time. So actually longitudinal data, suggests that cross-sectional data underestimates wasting by a factor of 5. So given that, if we conservatively assume that 17% is the India's cross-sectional measure, then nearly all children are actually having some experience of wasting at some point of time. And obviously there is a variation in that national average. So North Delhi district has 4% wasting, and Karimganj has 48% wasting prevalence. So there is clearly a kind of underestimation that we see that is likely to happen because we are using cross-sectional data to estimate wasting. Now, further, if we go deeper into longitudinal studies, what they seem to suggest is that stunting is basically the relationship or interdependence between them is quite strong, because stenting may be a biological response of earlier episodes of wasting. In other words, because child is not able to gain weight within a short span of time due to sustained nutritional stress, right? So because child is deprived from better nutritional environment or nutritional intake, he is not able to put on weight, or she is not able to put on weight. Height begins to shrink to attain a biological balance of height and weight, right? So that is how wasting and stunting is kind of interdependent or interlinked. In Gambia, the study found that initial wasting increases the odds of being stunted within next 3 months period by a factor of 3.2. So post 6 months wasting is much more serious predictor of stunting than in first 6 months. So if the child is wasted in first 6 months, it is not such a strong concern, but it becomes a concern if child gets wasted after 6 months. So the study actually found that in first 6 months of wasting, if child gets wasted in first 6 months, it did not have any significant effect on stunting. But those children who experienced wasting after 6 months of age had greater variability in weight in the first 17 months of life. So if you are wasted in first 17 months of life, then you had a lower height, probability of having a lower height between 18 to 24 months. So all of them suggest that wasting is an important concern, even if stunting may be your focus, because if you don't address wasting, you cannot address stunting, because wasting has impact on future stunting. So obviously, there is no wonder that we may not have progressed in stunting as well, even though every focus is on stunting. In India, almost every time we talk about child nutrition, we always focus on stunting. Stunting has reduced barely by 1 percentage point per year. So it's not a sufficient progress. Now, even though I have already discussed that low birth weight data is not really that good, even then you see the markers here. So those children who are the red bars are basically children who are underweight, born below the born with low birth weight, and green ones are for those children who are born without low birth weight, low weight. So these children, green ones are better ones, and dot ones are the children who are born. And if you look at their stunting and wasting in both periods, NFHS 4 and NFHS 5, they actually have significant difference. So children who are born with low birth weight seem to have high prevalence in wasting as well as in stunting. So the idea is that if the policies that are being pursued through ICDS, they should be able to reverse some of these disadvantages that are generated at birth or at antenatal stage, but these policies have not, maybe if these policies did not exist, maybe that gap would have been much more higher. We don't know. But the fact is that we are not able to neutralize the differences at the birth because of our policies. That is very, very clear. Now, why this happens is that, if you look at the way ICDS functions, you will see that the data that is generated through ICDS because every Anganwadi worker is supposed to record the anthropometric weight and height measures of children periodically for every month. And this is a sample of, first of all, notice that it is written by pencil, which means that it can be changed whenever someone likes to change it. Secondly, see the linear progression. 500 grams, 600 grams, 700 gram, 800 gram, and then 8 kilos, 8 kilo, 100 grams. So, every month the child is having a linear progress without any reduction. Now, it is because of the incentive structure that is woven around the institution of ICDS program. So we are unable to use this data for any good reason. So if the incentive structures were such that the Anganwadi workers were honest in, or were honestly recording these indicators, we would have the largest longitudinal data of children's anthropometric measure. But all the efforts is happening, all the resources are being there, or the budget is there, but we are not able to use that data. So how did we land up there? We have this high growth regime, but then we don't have that kind of corresponding performance in nutritional outcomes. So first of all, we have been a little bit lazy in monitoring social indicators. So the NFHS survey 4, NFHS survey 3, and NFHS 4 were having a gap of one full decade in which India was growing massively, right? So when you are growing massively, you don't know what is happening to your social indicators. On the other hand, the rhetoric in the 11th and 12th plan was that we want to halve the prevalence of these indicators, all these indicators, stunting, wasting, and underweight. But the 11th plan finished in 2012. There was no survey to actually assess what happened during the 11th plan. And finally, we had a survey in 2015-16 where 12th plan had already moved in, and we don't know how much achievement was done during 11th plan because there is no data to do that. So, and during the period, it is very important that countries that are growing fast, they assess their social and environmental indicators, because to make sure that the economic growth that is happening is not happening, or whatever is the cost of social and environmental cost of that economic growth, because if we don't know, then there might not be a clear course correction for these growth policies.
Please.
Yeah. Hello, sir.
5 minutes more, please. Can you wind up?
Yeah. I will wind up there very soon, sir. So, so the idea is that as I told you, stunting is the indicator that we use for almost every reference to undernutrition. So if you look at Dean Spears' book, Deanne Coffey and Dean Spears' book, which is very famous, Where India Goes, you will see only reference to stunting. Then recently, Odisha government, along with UNICEF, IFPRI and World Bank, organized a seminar where they actually, they titled it as reducing stunting. Like, it was not even reducing undernutrition; it was just reducing. So, and we are still not talking about wasting. And there is a clear literature that we have on relationship between stunting and wasting. And this is an indicator, where we actually topping the list in the world, and there is nothing that we can actually defend in terms of, how to say, like there was a genetic argument against, height measure or stunting measure, which Panagaria raised in 2013. in a paper in EPW, and recent paper of Simantini actually discusses in great detail about how this happened and how ineffective that was. But then the thing is that this kind of argument resurfaces, genetic argument that Indian children are genetically dispossessed for lower heights. But you cannot actually argue that Indian children need less body mass, right, for a given height than the children of other countries. It is very difficult to defend this kind of argument. And yet we are actually worst in that indicator, and we are not talking about that. And the thing is that whatever estimate that we have is going to be an underestimate by huge margin, and we are not worried about that. But the thing is that there is nothing wrong if policy is focusing exclusively on stunting, but the problem is that we don't recognize the interdependence that is there between stunting and wasting. Because if stunting directly or if wasting indirectly or indirectly became a part of the policy calculus, it would affect the way we intervene, right? Because the approach to intervene for reducing wasting means that we will be more sort of focused on disasters. We will be more focused on areas that are suffering from violence, because we know children suffer in those areas, right? So look at Yemen. The world is running a biggest world food program for children of Yemen because it is a violence area. So so as long as, in whatever way, either directly or indirectly, wasting is a part of the calculus of the policy response, then we will have some sort of different way of intervening. Right now, because of stunting is a long-run measure, we don't care about these small variations in certain areas due to violence or environmental shocks, or because of economic shocks. For example, if wasting was part of the calculus of the policy response, our response during COVID to children's nutrition would have been very, very different. So this is the argument that I'm trying to raise here, is that if wasting was indeed a part of policy calculus, we would have not been there where we are right now. We would have made much more faster progress in wasting. That is obviously because we will be focusing on wasting, but then we would have improved the stunting as well because of the interdependency between wasting and stunting. I'm not going to focus on these, global hunger index because the time is limited, but I have made my point. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jakaria. Let me now call Dr. Simantini to initiate the discussion. Are you there, Simantini? Hello?
Yes.
Yes, please go ahead.
I'm there. Yeah. Am I audible? Yeah. Yeah. Inviting me to discuss this paper. And Zakaria, it has been an extremely interesting paper. And thank you very much. And I have some points, which I will just quickly mention one by one. So first of all, I felt that as it was a wonderful exposition of the important issues in this context. And as you said in the beginning of your lecture, that for the students, it would be a brilliant, kind of exposure to everything that matters in the field of stunting and wasting, child undernutrition. It's a brilliant overview. But as far as an individual paper, I actually am not very, I was not very clear about, what was the focus of the particular paper. If it is, if I have not understood wrongly, then maybe it is that we need to focus on wasting, which is important in its own right. And much of the focus in this field is on stunting. if this is the point that you want to make in perhaps a discussion note or maybe a policy paper, then it is quite convincing. The argument that you have given is quite convincing. But as a research paper, like the paper that you've written on calorie consumption, your latest one, it's I don't think a similar kind of, it doesn't have a similar kind of motivation. This is much of a policy oriented paper, if I have understood it correctly. So now the points that I have, first of all, as you have very nicely, very interestingly shown
Switch up the video, Simantini, we can hear you better.
intersection between stunting and wasting. So about 5% of children. Okay. So is
Yeah,
yeah.
we can hear you now.
Okay. So as you said, as you have shown, that 5% of children are both around 5% of children are both stunted and wasted. So if that is the case, then these are the children who are the most vulnerable ones in terms of their health outcomes. And they are the ones who are the primary, should be the primary focus of public policy in terms of nutrition and child health. Now, what about the others? That is there, if I could think of this intersection between stunting and wasting, then there are two other categories which are very important. That is children who are wasted but not stunted. So then for them, the problem seems to be of a very short-term kind of nature. As you were saying, maybe due to some kind of violence or maybe due to, a public health calamity like maybe the COVID-19 or something like that, some kind of public health emergency which has led to this short-term deprivation, short-term failure in child health, which would be the children who are wasted but not stunted. So for them, the intervention would be of a particular nature. Because if it is a short-term problem, then it would involve some resource, but of course, the focus would be on improving intakes, then reducing infection. So that would require one kind of intervention. But the other subset would be the ones who are stunted but not wasted. So if I think of the intersections between stunting and wasting, so for the ones who are stunted but not wasted, we already have a very interesting public health debate, because these are the ones whom, we had this older hypothesis of small but healthy. These are the children who the nutrition is like secular and pine. They had their hypothesis that these are the children who have been able to adapt to the crises, to the failure to attain linear growth was compensated by their body mass, and so that the weight was enough for the short stature. So for them, now the debate was then, with arguments by nutritionists like Gopalan, the debate was settled that yes, this is also problematic. Children who are stunted but not wasted. So we need to focus on them because they are faltering in terms of linear growth, and that has cognitive implications, that has implications in the labor market. So that was a hypothesis that was almost accepted unanimously by people who mattered. But then with Aravind Panagaria's argument and with the debate that emerges every year with the release of the Global Hunger Index, we now are actually, as you said, that we've been lazy. I would go a step further and say we are not just lazy, we are also in denial. Whenever there is anything, which is not glorified in terms of these statistics, we are in denial. The public policy experts and we have this ICMR expert committee, which now actually have started stunting itself as an indicator, as a valid indicator of child undernutrition. And so we actually found this quite scandalous at this moment. And then we also need to, all these debates, which were thought that these were settled, and then we all accepted that, yes, as Professor Mishra was saying in his brilliant, introduction to this talk, he was saying that whether we should focus on these normative standards or not, because the World Health standards, as we all know, are are based on how children should grow and not how children actually grow. So we also have the previous the NCHS standards, so we could use that and also check what the situation is like, because as Zakaria has shown us that when we compare sub-Saharan African countries with Indian states, we know how dire the situation is. So here briefly then my point would be to look at the intersectional categories of stunting and wasting, and focus on them in a bit different way, because the interventions would also be different. That is, children who are wasted but not stunted, and children who are stunted but not wasted. So how these two categories are different, it may add an interesting dimension to the paper. So that was my first point. And then the P comparison which you showed was very interesting. And I myself have a very, it's a curiosity of my own. When I was looking at the NFHS data, and I would use this opportunity because you have experts here, we have experts here. So what is happening in Kerala actually? Because in Kerala, we find that stunting has increased between the last two rounds, and Zakaria had also shown us that the better performing states actually have a higher, the decline in reducing undernutrition is also lower for these some of these states. So I would ask you, I would want to know what is happening in Kerala now. Maybe when we were discussing about this, we had a hunch maybe that sanitation coverage will no longer be a factor in states like Kerala, because it's already a very high, that the sanitation coverage, it's already very high. So maybe other things are important once a certain level is reached. So what those factors are, that is one question which I have. And then you showed us this ICDS access. So in most of the papers, and in when I have analyzed the NFHS data myself for my thesis and later on in other works, I always found that the ICDS has a negative significance in terms of stunting. So what happens in case of wasting? That's one curiosity I have, because I found that we could not explain it. Why should access to ICDS be associated with higher rates of stunting? Then we thought that maybe because it was due to targeting, or what would be the logic? That is, the ones who are availing of the ICDS services are the ones who are having worse nutritional outcomes. So it is working the other way around. Is that the reason? That's one question. And then maybe the last point that I have is that the policy incentives which you spoke of, probably that is the most important thing, because we at IDSK, we are working on an education project, and there also we find that when you were showing the ICDS register, the handwritten notes, and we found certain analogous disturbing policy incentives which go wrong in case of education also, because reduced dropouts bring certain, showing reduced dropouts are associated with certain incentives. So maybe actual attendance, actual dropout rates, what they are in comparison to the recorded ones. So there may be a big difference. So then we probably need to think in these lines. And last point is that, as I was working on this issue about, when we look at the global hunger index, which you had in your presentation, but due to paucity of time, you did not focus on it. But the global hunger index, as we all know, is a very debated issue, which comes up every year with the release of the hunger index rankings. And India performs very poorly. Now, the indicators there, the global hunger index has a lot of problems, and it is full of methodological errors, yes, but the indicators, the primary indicators which which drive India towards the lower ends of the ranking figures are actually stunting and wasting. And these are the NFHS figures which they use, as all of us know. So then the focus on wasting is actually warranted, because the global hunger index also includes wasting. Now, when we were probing into the wasting figures for India, we found certain very interesting works in the medical literature. In the medical journals, there is one author. He's a doctor, and his name is C.S. Yajnik. He did some surveys in Pune, and he has published widely. So he makes the point that he calls this a thin fat Indian baby. So small Indian babies who have small abdominal viscera and low muscle mass, but they preserve body fat during their intrauterine development. So they are, as he is showing, that these children are predisposed to an insulin resistant state. So that's also related to the high incidence of diabetes in India, which is likely to emerge as a very big public health crisis in the next few decades. So that's all. I have all these points. Thank you.
Thanks, Simantini. So you heard for long now, so I would rather consider that this young mind, something provokes you to raise anything, something contentious.
I hope none of you got stunted. Yeah, I think I was thinking that, the more expert you become on a topic, the probability of you thinking that everybody knows the topic, that happens. I thought it would have been very enlightening if the whole concept has been well explained and the multifactorial forces and factors that give rise to it, and what is the existing understanding on the topic that we have, and what is that we do not know, which in turn would have provoked a lot of questions in terms of what does it mean for the people sitting here in terms of public finance. I'm inclined to believe that factors like sanitation in terms of, when you use the word endowment, it's a catch-all term, endowment. If you have been able to open that black box for us, we would have been able to reflect more effectively as public finance scholars here, what is the takeaway for us? Not specifically public policy, but public finance, in fact. I think that is something which I thought it was sadly missing. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Joseph. Yes, Narayana sir, please.
Since the large body of students refuse to ask questions to Zakaria. No, I am a student. He has taught many of them. So I think they are refusing to ask questions, I suppose. See, I was listening to you, Zakaria, very, very intently. Suddenly, I lost track. I thought there is something wrong with me. Age is probably catching up. But when Simantini made that statement that I was not very clear what was the focus of the paper, I thought, no, it's not my problem. That is my first. Obviously, the way you presented, I think it's fairly difficult to concentrate. What is it that you are trying to drive at? My second problem with your presentation is not one word on access to healthcare. You talk of infection, you talk of various other things, but the variation across access to healthcare, there's not a single word. I was a bit surprised. My third problem. Now you see, somewhere you mentioned that episodes of wasting leads to stunting, longitudinal sort of a thing. If that is true, then let us come to that intersection. That means those that stunted ones, at some point, they must have been wasted. So it's not that the intersection that is important. In fact, the rest of that area That becomes important. Now, my questions are, but can you have stunting without wasting? Or can you not have stunting with wasting? I think those then become important. You can't just introduce it and leave it at that, because you start with the long-term relationship. This is something which I just that's why I said somewhere on the way I just lost the track of what was happening. Thank you.
Thanks, Professor Nara. I think, Jakaria, it's a very tough job you have given. Even you have actually told a great story, lengthy story. I would advise as my student that please nowadays be careful that when we speak, we must also look at the crowd that they are not bored. This I learned very hard way. So I just felt today that it was quite long, and people say, why without focus? I'm actually resolving your problem in a way. I'm trying to. This whole presentation actually presented a lot of problematics. If you take those axes of problematics, at certain point, you talked about seasonality. At certain point, you talked about, it's comparison of levels. And then also you talked about comparison over time. Now it brings me that these problematics that if you have, and you have definitely evidence you indicated, you have a good job at hand. What will you do with these problematics? You should use them, am I right? My major contention is comparison. Comparison, you are saying wasting is not declining, somewhat underweight and stunting is declining. So these evidence that you suggest gives us a clue as to we should compare inducting them into the exercise, first of all. If you induct them into the exercise, demographic acumen tells me that you can do that because it's not very difficult. If you do an adjustment and see what it entails when it comes to comparison. If you believe that, and you showed that there is seasonality, yes. Second point that I wanted is that, talking about levels, when the levels have become very much low, or it has reached a stage, a better stage, the progress becomes an anxiety. And actually all this debate about why there is no progress. I would suggest that let us engage with this whole phenomenon of progress being well measured, well understood as to, yes, progress will become slow, that's all right. But we are actually making a progress or not cannot be this simplistic as people are doing. Therefore, I don't even believe in demographic indicators sometimes that something is stalling. I don't believe. That stalling is also a progress. That's what I sometimes feel that, I'm a little hefty. So people say, Mishra ji, you are not able to reduce your weight. I started a new quote that is saying that, reducing your weight is commendable. Reducing your weight is desirable, but maintaining your weight is also commendable. Because the problem is clinically, you must understand, people don't believe, but metabolism requires that you are able to maintain it or not. That is also metabolism in play. Now, this is out of the context I told you, but I think there is one thing that level sensitive progress or progress measurement you should bring in so that, your whole idea of context of discussion will become better. And third and very important thing is that, when we do characteristics pattern comparison, more often I listen this in many presentations when you give this characteristics. I am nowadays very unhappy that what is ideal characteristics pattern? Characteristics pattern just an exposition of differences, am I right? What is ideal? We should go behind it and say, this is ideal and this characteristics pattern that we are getting is undesirable, or it is not ideal, against ideal, something like that. Otherwise, every characteristics pattern cannot excite people. If you have data, you can show. And last, I wanted to tell you that you are engaging with this birth weight information. You yourself shown that there is problem. There is, bunching of weight and all that. I think that is not a problem of survey. And also that is going to remain. That is going to remain. In fact, I have been struggling to being involved in a debate where I'm telling that this is the first biomarker of life and we are not able to get it accurately is a big, big loss. Having said that, why not you think of that current weight, what is given to you, trace back the weight. Think of how do you reconstruct birth weight. In fact, if you correspond with me, I will give you several papers in this regard, and I'm also myself thinking that this needs to be done rather than waiting for the birth weight to be collected accurately or administrative records giving us good birth weight. But one problem is that with this very WHO standard criteria, failures on a given normative will never tell us the real story. In fact, statistical and mathematical things that whatever we know, it is better to engage in an assessment of growth faltering. Literally growth faltering. Well, we don't have this background information of birth weight, I agree. But we have people from different ages, how have they progressed? We have a distribution at hand. So there is a kind of a faltering happening. When I myself say, I will go by their own logic of plus minus 2 standard deviation and all. But I will still say this much proportion of children have faltered as regard this, rather than, designating or stunting or wasting. Why I am emphasizing on faltering? Because faltering itself will inform me why has the faltering happened. The only reason I am emphasizing on faltering and for you to engage in that is because you mentioned the epidemiologic environment. That is which you are bringing in as saying there are populations where there is infection proneness, there is, health seeking behavior different and all that. That will tell us that actually this also adds to faltering. That also gives rise to faltering. Because, discontinuation, non-adherence of medication and many other things, they play a role. Faltering will tell a better story. And if you break your head with the normative examination, categorization, I'm completely, as a measurement man, I'm completely against dichotomy around normatives. Because dichotomy around normatives never will tell us the story. I'm not saying I'm subscribing to the fact that Indian children should be measured differently, but anyway, it is a dichotomy on a normative. And how much is that normative to be relied upon is a matter of contention. Is that right? So that is why I'm talking of faltering. It's not because of any other reason. If you can do that, it will be good. My suggestion, grand suggestion to you, this paper will step up to be a very good paper, provided you attain the objective of modification, correction to your assessment based on the problematics that you exposed, which I listed down here. Like, in terms of seasonality, in terms of this, in terms of that, whatever you have displayed, can you take into account that and make your assessment adjusted to that? That would be the best thing that you can do to make the paper focus towards what you are attending towards, what you want to attend ultimately. Thank you. If you have some observations, please, you would like to respond something, please go ahead.
Thank you so much, sir. I'm glad that I got this feedback. And yes, of course, things like this can be boring because I was trying to bring out a lot of things that apparently may look disconnected, but they are indeed connected. And that's because, my ability to say coherent story, first of all, is not at par. And the second thing is that, bringing different things in a much more coherent way is quite challenging task. And I keep putting this in front of my student as well. So, and I take this criticism head on, actually. I agree that it may not be, best story. Thank you, Narayana sir, for clearly articulating this. Regarding public finance, I I will first of all, just accept everything that Simantani has raised in that discussion of this paper. Actually, this is clearly a work in progress. We are still not close to where we should be in terms of clear analysis. We are still trying to find the axis of analysis, and so this is just a kind of exploratory kind of idea to see where things need to be investigated more deeply. So regarding ICDS and negative correlations, yeah, we also found similar things when we were doing that, and I strongly agree on your point that incentive structure is an endemic problem in Indian policy institutional framework, because if you look at reproductive health, we have similar problem. We wanted an informed decision by women to use contraceptives, but we ended up with something else. Absolutely. Then we have similar problem in education. We wanted children to learn better, but we ended up putting everyone in the school because we satisfied the participation constraint, so that everybody goes to the school, children goes to the school, teachers goes to the school, but we could not make sure that the actually activity of learning is going on. So this is an endemic problem of our policy. Institutions are very good at ensuring participation constraint, which is meaning that incentive to participate in the program is quite well ensured. But then the incentive compatibility, which is to ensure that actually people do what they are supposed to do after they participate in the process, is not actually ensured. So, so this is an endemic problem of policy institutions in India, that we are not that good at not good at doing that. And regarding global health, global hunger index, the commentary that I had a little bit of discussion, which I actually skipped. Basically, my point was that most of the criticism that actually leveled against GHI was on the basis of the fact that GHI uses that FAO's data on that severity of food shortage or things like that on a based Gallup poll survey, but that was completely irrelevant, because and it is because of that indicator that India's rank is a little bit better. In fact, if you reduce that component altogether from global hunger index, India's rank would move from 107 to 117, which is just 4 countries from the bottom. Like, there are only 4 countries after India. So India's rank would become much worse. And if you were to use wasting as the only indicator of global hunger, which is actually make much sense, because it is about weight, it is about biomass in the body of a given height. So if you are hungry, the best indicator is that how much is your weight given your height. So this is the best indicator. Now, if you use that indicator for the children, India would be 124 in that index, because there are only 124 in the list. So that was my broad point. And thank you for indicating me towards the literature on India's medical doctors research on that. I'll follow up with you for that, for those works. And our director's comment on whether public finance was missing. Yes, of course, my focus was to bring on why it is important to include wasting in the policy response towards undernutrition, which is currently not done. So the idea is that from public finance perspective, whether we actually create an create a intervention which is actually broad-based, meaning that it improves the environment so that children can grow in better environment. So we should spend more money on creating better epidemiological environment, or we should actually, spend money to increase the entitlements of individuals to access better food or better nutritional resources or better healthcare and things like that, right? So these are the policy questions that that will come from the financing side. What kind of financing needs to be done, and whether there is a good balance between those two. But it is totally independent question to the problem that I am trying to raise. So I did not talk about those things because I had very limited time, and besides that, it was first to establish what the problem is, and then we talk about the problem of financing them. And Narana sir's question about about the healthcare access. Yes, I mean, my focus was mostly on establishing the empirics around how ignorant we have been about the patterns of wasting, and the common understanding about the fact that Kerala or Tamil Nadu or other better performing states are way better than Bihar and other worse performing states is kind of coming to end when we start thinking or looking at wasting patterns. So that is really good. And finally, very good direction by Professor Mishra about this paper, that instead of depending on this dichotomous response from whether it has reached a particular benchmark or not, just look at the absolute numbers and see how things are changing, how things are increasing or decreasing, in terms of, absolute measures of, weight or height, instead of looking at it from a particular benchmark. I completely agree with you, sir. But idea was just to see, initially whether my hunch of focusing on wasting was right or not. And I think I have kind of settled with this idea that, and given the feedback I got today, it looks like this is worth investigating. And I will get a solid empirical base going on, and I will definitely interact with you about this first thing. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Zachariah. So anybody else is online? Online, anybody wants to raise something? Who are available online? Zachariah, are there participants online? Can you see?
Yeah, there are some
sir, yes, sir.
participants, at least 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4 participants are there, but I don't think they have questions
Okay.
because they would have raised by now.
So then anyway, now let us.
Sir, your sound went off.
Sorry. Yeah, we have spent more than 1.5 hours. I thought we should close it for today, and we can continue this discussion. Yes, we have a vote of thanks anyway to be given by Kiran. Yeah, please go ahead.
Thank you, sir. So we come to the last part of this exciting seminar, to the ceremonial. So we are not formally giving you a word of thanks because you are very much part of the gift, but still, as per the protocol, Dr. Zachariah, thank you very much for accepting our invitation and talking about a very, very important issue, which is of very policy relevance. And then you rightly pointed the inconsistencies in the way we look at things when it comes to nutrition, and also made a case for looking at wasting. I think that is a very right direction, and you have given us very crucial insights on this. Thank you very much. I would like to place on record much appreciation for Professor U.S. Mishra, who immediately accepted the kind invitation that, and also we couldn't think of a better person to chair this session. And it's indeed, we are indeed very happy that he could also join us in person. You know, it's a coincidence that he happens to be in Trivandrum around this time, and then when we called him,
Not happened. He came all the way from Mumbai. Not happened. Nothing happened.
okay, yeah, and I would like to thank Dr. Simantani Mukherjee. In fact, we have been thinking who would be the right person to discuss this paper. Then we came across you, Dr. Simantani Chakravarti, Asush Mukhopadhyay. We couldn't think of a better person than you. You have done your PhD on child nutrition, and your comments have been very, very insightful. Thank you for taking your time, despite the fact that you are on a vacation. And we welcome you to GIFT, and we seek your continued support in the future events as well.
Thank you.
I would like to thank our director, who has always been encouraging to keep this seminar session live and active. I would like to thank our faculty members, fellow participants online as well as offline. And I would like to thank our IT team, who is always on the toes to make this event a very successful one. Thank you, one and all. We'll meet again in the next event, which is going to happen in the first week of June.
Zakaria, we shall catch up. How it's already must be too late for dinner time for you. You missed your dinner.
Muted. You're muted.
No, I had my dinner, sir. Then I sat. When you talk about nutrition, you don't miss nutrition, right?
That's why your energy levels were quite high for a sustained period of time.
Zakaria, we shall catch up. Okay. We'll.
Yeah. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Bye.
Right. Yeah, bye.